Okay, let's move on to, who would you rather talk to? Do you have a pick? Or I'll pick.
You pick. I'll pick the next one.
Brandon in Arizona. Wow, it sounds like you're in a wind tunnel. Are you there?
Sounds like I'm in a wind tunnel again, huh? Hold on, let me do this.
Ooh.
Better?
Way better. I like it.
My apologies.
That's all good. You called before, right?
We talked a couple times. I don't know if you remember. I'm the guy that my position is that prophecy proves that God is real and that Jesus is God.
I had no idea about that, so I'm anxious to hear how this pans out.
Well, I'm anxious to see how this is different from the last call.
Yeah, you don't get to just repeat the same argument. You have to give us something new, something fresh, something that will make us go,
Sure, that's I'm just trying to point out, and that's also why I recommended you check out that Dave Hunt documentary on Israel. Israel, Armageddon.
Yeah.
I don't know if you got a chance to watch that or not.
Well, so did I go over the Texas sharpshooter fallacy with you?
The what?
Ah, gotcha. Okay. So just imagine you're driving down the highway and you see all of these barns, you're out in the country. And as you're passing, you see one barn where there are these concentric circles. There are these bullseyes painted on the barn. And in the exact center is an arrow. And you get curious. And so you go and you knock on the door and you say, oh my gosh, how do you have this amazing accuracy? And they say, I'll show you. And they take you out and they shoot an arrow at the barn and they walk up with a can of paint and paint concentric circles around it. When you post hoc go in, you can make a lot of things fit. And that's why that's one of the reasons why prophecy is so, it doesn't hold water. Do you know how skepticism works, Brandon?
Sure.
How does skepticism work? Because I think you might be surprised.
Well, I'd be curious to hear your definition, but I mean, to me, it's just somebody that needs to see it to believe it, basically.
Not quite. So I'm not a fan of Descartes, but I'm going to give you just a little quick snippet because he did do something that really helped skepticism. He went through this process and he said, how do I know those things that I think I know? He wanted to come to this capital T truth conclusion about things. And so he said, well, can I trust my senses? Okay, well, what if I'm dreaming? Right? If I'm dreaming, is there anything that I can know? Well, what about, math? Well, is there any way math could be? And he broke those things down. And the way he did it is by going, well, how can this be wrong? And that's kind of the system that we've wound up using in science, is we get to a place and then we try to break it down because we want it to stand up to reality. And so when you say, okay, here's a prophecy, and I say, well, here's how it could be wrong, what I'm saying is you can't say it has to be this way when it could also be one of the others, and there needs to be an evaluation. And so as you're presenting these prophecies, I want you to understand, I'm not trying to be an asshole and be contrarian. What I'm saying is that the idea that there's no other option but, this fulfilled prophecy, I'm trying to show you ways that it could be.
Sure. No, I get where you're coming from. So, but I mean, I think that, it's just I'm just using prophecy as one angle, basically, to prove that, because I mean, I hope you and I can both agree that if everything that you've learned turns out to be a lie, then what knowledge have you obtained? You know what I mean? Truth is very important. Wouldn't you agree?
I think truth is important for all of us, or we wouldn't, frankly, be doing this show if we didn't care about what's true.
Sure.
Brandon, I didn't hear your original call, so you'll have to forgive me. I'm at a slight disadvantage, but I would be well, there's two things that I have to say to your argument as I understand it, but before I launch into that, I am interested to know if there's kind of like a magic bullet prophecy that you think is unassailable, it's your go-to example of a prophecy that proves that God exists, what would it be?
Sure. Yeah, my go-to is Daniel chapter 9 prophecy, where you can prove outside of the Bible the date that Artaxerxes made the decree for Jerusalem to be rebuilt, and then it says in the prophecy that exactly from that day, 483 years later, which is 173,880 days, the Messiah will enter the gates of Jerusalem on an ass.
I understand the premise. Who do you think wrote Daniel?
Daniel.
Is that what Bible scholars say?
As far as I know, yeah. I don't know. I've never heard any argument against Daniel being the author of the book of Daniel.
The fact that you haven't heard any argument against the idea that the Bible book bearing the name Daniel was literally written by Daniel would indicate to me that there's some ground to be made up in terms of examining Bible scholarship, because what Bible scholars do is they look at the Bible and they say, okay, where did this document or series of documents come from? Who wrote it? Why did they write it? When did they write it? And what you'll find is that in case after case, including the book of Daniel, these are collaborative efforts that span vast periods of time, where rather than it being, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write the book of Daniel in a few months, it happens over a number of years, and information after the fact gets added. So that's the first issue I
deal
have
with a lot of Muslims that make that argument, so I hear where you're coming from.
That's the first issue I have with pretty much any prophetic example that you would care to come up with. But I think that your argument is fundamentally wrong for another reason, and that's that just because someone writes something that ends up being true, well, number one, it could be a coincidence. I grant you that it's unlikely to be a coincidence, but that's at least one explanation. Another explanation is that maybe they're a time traveler. That doesn't, they maybe they have technology that enables them to move through time. Wouldn't mean necessarily that there's any God involved. And if there were a God involved, if God inspired Daniel to make this prediction about Artaxerxes, but he has nothing whatsoever to say, think, or do about preventing the death of 9 million Jews in the Holocaust, I'm not particularly interested in getting to know this God.
So I'm just curious, what empirical evidence do we have for time travel?
I'm not saying that there is time travel. I'm giving you an example of how.
Hold on.
Yeah. Whoa. Sorry, I muted myself because I was coughing a little. Brandon, what empirical evidence do we have of omnipotence?
Well, the evidence to me is, if Jesus was telling the truth about who he claimed to be.
No, I don't grant that premise. No, I don't grant that premise. Try again. How do you empirically? Yeah, I don't care about if. I'm asking you to empirically prove omnipotence. How do you know that that's a thing that exists?
I have to go on, Jesus's claims.
Okay, so we've got Jesus's claims. So Jesus said it, and I believe him. How about omniscience?
Well, again, I'm going off of Jesus's claims.
Sure. Okay. How about
the resurrection?
No, hold on. Omnipresence. Omnibenevolence.
Again,
miracles.
Jesus proved all of that. If he was telling the truth about who he claimed to be,
you're right.
He proved it.
That's a tautology. You're saying if the book is true, then it's true. Cool story, bro. Brandon, I don't understand how you're holding this standard of evidence for one side and not the other. The fact is, let's take those and put them on a scale and then see what evens out on the scale, right? We'll put omnipotence, omnipresence, omnibenevolence, omniscience, right, on one side, and time travel on the other. In the grand scale of most likely, which do you think is more likely? Because I guarantee you, a time traveler doesn't have to be all-seeing, all-loving, all-powerful, all-knowing, all ever-present. So wouldn't time travel be more likely?
Not not to me anyway.
Why?
As far as there's no way to go back in the past. What's done is done.
You're right, and there's no way to be all powerful, all loving, all ever present, ever invisible. Those things that are ascribed to the Christian God.
Jesus is the strong argument against what you're claiming. That if he really is God.
What? Hold on.
There's been a bit of drift in the argument here because we've gone from prophecy to what Jesus did or didn't say. If you're going to give us multiple lines of argument in favor of theism, then that's fine. But I think we'd rather take one at a time. And your initial argument was that prophecy proves that God exists. And the answer is, well, no, it doesn't, because the prophecy can be edited after the fact, and also there are other ways that something could happen that wouldn't necessarily include there being a God. So we kind of answered your question, and now you seem to be drifting on to yes, but Jesus said this.
I mean, Occam's razor cuts it off.
But he fulfilled all of these, Old Testament. I mean, you guys know that the Septuagint was translated 250
Brandon,
years.
have you heard about
Jesus
Almach?
was born.
Have you heard about Almach and the story in Matthew about Jesus being born of a virgin? And have you studied where the word virgin comes from? It was a mistranslation in the Septuagint, because whoever wrote Matthew, and here's a little lesson for you, the books Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John weren't written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Those are assigned names. That were even if you read Matthew, it doesn't say, "Hey, I'm Matthew and I'm writing this." So whoever wrote Matthew, whoever wrote Matthew, used the Septuagint as a basis, and in the Septuagint, the writer of the Septuagint mistranslated from the original Hebrew the word woman into almah, which was almah, into virgin, and because of this mistranslation, the writer of Matthew then had to go to this elaborate story where Jesus gets born without there being any semen involved.
Well, the King James Bible was not translated from the Septuagint. In fact, King James...
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the way that Matthew was written. Whoever wrote Matthew, and it wasn't Matthew, but whoever wrote Matthew was basing what they were writing on the Septuagint. And your argument was that, Jesus fulfilled all these prophecies. And here you have a clear example, if you apply Bible scholarship and higher criticism, which quite frankly it seems you are not versed in. There are clear examples when you study the actual words of the writers coming up with ways in which Jesus had fulfilled prophecies. It's kind of a clue when it actually says in the book, Jesus did this so that this prophecy would be fulfilled. Jesus did this so that this prophecy would be fulfilled. Doesn't that make you a little bit suspicious that maybe, just maybe, they're making it all up just to tick a few boxes that were made for them by whoever wrote the Hebrew scriptures? And incidentally, we know more about the writers of the Hebrew scriptures than we know about the writers of the Greek scriptures. These guys are ghosts. We don't know anything about who wrote them. And so for you to be hinging all of these arguments on a literalistic interpretation of the Bible, which seems to be devoid of any understanding of Bible scholarship, it can be a bit frustrating.
Well, I mean, I do have some understanding of Bible scholarship, and I agree. On the New Testament, the gospel according to Matthew, according to Mark, according to Luke, I do agree. Those were not, directly written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So, I'm not arguing with you there. But now, when it comes to Old Testament scriptures, now we're talking about a different animal here.
We're again straying a little bit. So your initial argument was prophecy proves that God exists. We gave you an example of how that's not true of the Old Testament, and then you start giving us examples in the New Testament, and I give you an example of how that's not true either. So you seem to just kind of be prevaricating a little bit at this point. I feel we've answered the question.
Well, then tell me, what do you think the probability or possibility of Jesus fulfilling the prophecy of Daniel chapter 9 to the exact day, 173,000?
There's an excellent probability. There's an excellent probability if some unknown dude gets to write whatever the hell they want and not be identified, and they can write after the fact. There are infinite possibilities for that sort of thing to happen.
Well, scholars say that it was.
I don't think you
Daniel
really
was
know
written
what scholars say.
600 years before Jesus was even born.
I'm not convinced you know that much about what scholars say on this.
But with that, Brandon, that is the exact thing that you called about last time. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave the door open for you to call back. But if it hasn't, if you haven't shown that you haven't listened, and at least given it some due consideration, you will not be allowed to call back. That is your homework. I hope that you pick it up, because I'd love to have more conversations than how did you know when you were told exactly that. You were given that more than once. I'd love for you to actively listen, Brandon.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel that your reply is,
I obviously, because it doesn't back up your conclusion. So we're going to move on. I hope that you check it out. I hope to hear back from you. That is the prerequisite that I'm popping on you, though. You are not allowed to talk to us again until you can actually give us something new, something different, and show that you've listened.
Because we need to give other callers a chance to come in. You can't just have the same argument again and again. Let's keep things fresh.
It's the same reason Altangelo is banned from this show.
Yeah. I'm working on being banned. I'll get there eventually.
Brandon, take care,
all right,
man.
very good, man. I just don't find your answer acceptable. But
I would be very surprised if you did.